Kyrie Irving returns to the Brooklyn Nets following an 8-game suspension, and it's all cylinders firing for the Brooklyn Nets as they take down the Memphis Grizzlies 127-115. While it was Kyrie Irving coming back into the mix, it was Ben Simmons who ended up stealing the show for Brooklyn. We're going to talk about Kyrie's return, Ben Simmons' continued confidence and looking better and better every game. Obviously, Kevin Durant, the shooting of Yuta Watanabe. It's all going to be in here. But first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Got to tell you, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. I'm Doug Norrie, owner-operator, DFSR.com. No Adam Armbrecht with you tonight. Night off. He's owed many after covering for your guy here many times over the last couple weeks. That's all right. We're going to fly at this thing solo for the time being, and it's what a night to be able to do it because the Brooklyn Nets really, we've been saying this for a while, that they really needed to get Kyrie Irving back into the mix. Whatever you felt about the off-court stuff, the Nets had set out a timeline that they needed to, a timeline and a set of actions that they needed to see from Kyrie Irving for him to get back into it. And Kyrie Irving has been apologetic and appears to have completed all those things. And following an 8-game suspension that it turned out to be, he made his way back onto the court in this game against the Grizzlies. The Nets went 5-3 without Kyrie on the court, but it was clear that if they want to be able to hit like a certain level for this team and a certain kind of stylistic play and just probably W's in the win and loss column, that Kyrie Irving was going to need to be part of this team going forward. And he returns against the Grizzlies, a really, really undermanned Grizzlies team, missing John Morant, missing Jaren Jackson Jr., missing Desmond Bane. And they were coming at it with a skeleton crew, though in the past, this Memphis team has been very good playing with almost anybody. That's been a theme for them over the last couple of years. Even when Ja has been hurt, they've been able to, I believe they even had a better record last year, win percentage wise, when Morant didn't play. No one would make the claim that they don't want to have Morant on the team, but the Nets sort of get, lucky a little bit in that they're facing off against a Memphis team that is starting without 3 of their, top 4 best guys, or maybe just their top 3 best guys, depending on how you want to look at it. That's a good spot, though, to bring Kyrie Irving back into the mix following the 8-game suspension. Crowd seemed to welcome him pretty warmly. It didn't look like he was, overly aggressive here to start the game. In all, for him, it was a pretty quiet game, 5 for 12 from the field, ended up scoring 14 points, had 5 rebounds, threw an assist and a steal and a block in there as well. It's clearly, I think on any other night, we wouldn't start this podcast off by talking about this Kyrie Irving performance because it was just pretty ho-hum. That's to be expected. He's had a long layoff. He's been off for multiple weeks. The last time he played was on November 1st against Chicago, a game following Steve Nash having been fired and Kyrie going through some turmoil already in the media with what he had posted and some backlash from that. That was a horrible game. He shot 2 for 12 in that game and looked completely disinterested. And we haven't seen him since. It's been 19 days. And, the team went on the West Coast road trip and he was not part of it. So for him to come back into this one, and I don't think the expectations here were super high in terms of what would happen when he got back on the court, except that Nets fans want to see him come back and see the team perform well. And I think that's probably ends up being the key. The key for the Nets in this game with Kyrie Irving back was that they just had to look like a good basketball team. And that seems like it's an overly simplistic way to look at it, but it's really not, because a lot of the things that have been said in Kyrie's absence, especially in those first few games when he was not on the court, when they went right out and beat Washington really bad, they beat the Hornets. They ended up losing a really close one to Dallas, and then they crushed the Knicks. So, and those are all, and then they beat the Clippers as well. So it's 4 of the first 5 games without Kyrie were 3 of them were just sort of statement wins. Then one against Charlotte was close, and they almost could have won the Dallas game. So some of the talk starts to be like, well, are the Nets better without Kyrie Irving? And Adam and I had talked about this at length in the past, about how that while whatever you think of Curry, whatever you think of Kyrie, I don't think there's tons of basketball cases to be made against by saying that your team is better without him. And I think even with this specific situation with the Nets are not going to be better without him. They need to have Kyrie Irving playing peak basketball this year and for the rest of the year in order to really contend as a team. I think that's not a hot take, even in the slightest. And even though they had a nice little stretch of basketball without him, the Lakers loss and the Sacramento Kings loss aside, and they followed up with the tip-in win against Portland. While I think that it was good that they went out and played sort of a little bit of a new brand of basketball, they were clearly running everything through Durant, allowed Simmons to come in off the bench a little bit and work his way back into it. Well, I think that was good for the team to go through that and to maybe just kind of come together in Kyrie's absence. The belief has always been that Kyrie was going to end up back with the team at some point, and that was going to be on the positive side of the ledger for the team. So for this game against the Grizzlies, him coming back into the mix, like I said before, you really just want to see him come back, have things look comfortable, go out and get a win against an undermanned Grizzlies team, right? Have it look just pretty normal. Maybe there would get some flashes of some old Kyrie stuff, but for the most part, continue on with some of the gains that they had made in his absence. Continue on with some of the basketball that they've been playing, quicker basketball, more movement, working through KD doubles to try to find, weak side shooters. And that was things that they had really leaned into during these last 8 games without Kyrie around. Have him reinsert into the mix, have him play his own style of basketball, make sure it works with what they're doing, and go out and get the W. And that is what they did here against the Grizzlies. Again, like I said before, they get a little lucky with who Memphis ends up bringing into Barclays on Sunday night. That's a team that is just not without 3 of their best players. And anytime that you have most of your guys outside of Nic Claxton not being there, if you are pretty much a full squad with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, and some shooters, this is a squad that should be able to take down this Grizzlies team basically every single time. And that's what you got. That's what you got here on Sunday night. You got a nice win by the Nets. They pull away in the 4th. They end up winning by 12. Probably feels a little closer than that for most of the game. Doesn't feel that close as 12 when they're getting things really rolling in the 4th quarter. And this is just what you want. You don't want to create any more drama around questioning whether or not Kyrie should or should not be on the team. You don't want to create more drama around trying to figure out if having Kyrie Irving is the best version of your basketball team, because it clearly is. It clearly is. He is among when he's playing and showing off what he can do. Kyrie Irving is among the very best players in all of basketball. You want guys like this from a basketball perspective on your team. And what you don't want to do is create scenarios around, talking points that could open up a discussion to say, oh, maybe the Nets, shouldn't get him back, because I think that would end up being silly. And luckily, that's not the case that we're in. So we got more to talk about here. Obviously, want to get into Ben Simmons' game. Simmons has looked like a completely new player here over the last few. So I want to be able to break down a little bit of what he's done as well. So we're going to get into that in a second. First, going to tell you about our friends over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes it can feel like, life needs an instruction manual. There's a lot of stuff going on in your life. You got schedules, you got commitments, you got family, you got a job. And it can feel, frankly, like sometimes like it's all a little too much, and life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working out for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's like a career change, a new relationship, becoming a parent. With BetterHelp, therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills. It makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. Things aren't clicking? You can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, Ben Simmons time. Ben Simmons has been, we talked, Adam and I, and really everyone in Nets Nation has talked at length about the need, and this is so obvious, the need for Ben Simmons to get into the fold on this team and show off at least a high percentage of what we've seen from Ben Simmons in the past when he was firing on all cylinders. The version of Ben Simmons that when they traded James Harden away, even though at the time James Harden was a complete malcontent, he was still James Harden, who's still an all-star level basketball player, that when they got Ben Simmons back, the hope was that Ben Simmons was going to be the Ben Simmons of old. Prior to the Atlanta series, this Ben Simmons that was like an all-NBA guy, the Ben Simmons that was defensive player of the year candidate, this Ben Simmons. And frankly, to start the season, we really hadn't seen it. It had come in glimpses and, bits and bobs here in the preseason, and then he was sitting out, and then he had needed to come off the bench. But these last 3 games for Ben Simmons have begun to show you the version of Simmons that the Nets thought they were trading for. It's been very clear that there has been a shift ever since the Kings game, which is where he came off the bench and we only played 20 minutes, but it started to look good. And then it started to really look good against the Blazers. And the Blazers is where you could just see it. You could see something had clicked, right? You could see this version of Simmons that was getting out of a timid, sort of just non-aggressive guy on the court and into a guy that all of a sudden, whether it was by being prodded by the team, but whether it was just overall health, whether it was just him starting to feel more comfortable in the offense or what the Nets needed out of him, he comes out against the Blazers, puts up 15 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, and we all said it at the time, clearly his best game as a Net. What you love to see is that in this Grizzlies game, he followed it right up, that there was no real backslide at all with Simmons. And in fact, in some ways, things got even better for him in this game. Some things were working out to his advantage here. One, Nic Claxton doesn't play, out for personal reasons, so they need to put Simmons into the starting lineup, and they have to play him at the 5. That's really the only kind of play that they had. Everyone else, they're not going to shuffle the starting lineup around too much here with him in the mix. So it was like a pretty one-to-one swap, and we've been seeing that for the most part with Claxton. When they wanted to rotate those first rotations out, it was Simmons coming in for Claxton because they were not trying to overlap their minutes too much. So having Simmons start here seems like the pretty obvious move. It's not a great pull against a guy like Steven Adams, but for the most part, that's going to be a problem. Almost anybody that you get going in terms of like NBA opposing centers, especially guys who start, is going to be a tough lift for a guy like Simmons to get in there and have to essentially play the defensive 5 against these teams. They switched it around a little bit. Durant got that matchup a few times, but for the most part, that is Simmons against Steven Adams. On the defensive end, I do think for the most part, he did all he could there. It's just Adams is bigger than him, stronger than him, and when they want to run stuff through the low block, especially back to the basket, it's going to be hard for almost anybody that's not a true center to be able to keep up with a guy like Adams. But on the offensive end is where you got to start feeling a little bit excited here about what you're getting from Ben Simmons, because the last 2 games, what we've seen from him is, if, and not the whole time, but for a lot of it, if those defenders are going to be on their back foot or sagging off or just allowing a runway for him to get into the paint, he's basically saying to teams now that he's going to take it, that he is going to push the envelope here, that he's going to push the ball into the paint, and he's going to try to get to the rim on you. And this is what we've been begging to see from him since the beginning of the season. Try to turn the corner on some defenders, and if other defenders are going to allow you to get ahead of steam to the basket, then he's big enough. He has to be able to take it. He had not been doing that this season, and not nearly enough to make you feel really comfortable about what you were getting in terms of his skill set. And now we're starting to see it. He's starting to take those advantages. He's starting to say, if you are going to drop off into the lane, if you are going to allow me 4 to 5 feet of runway, then Simmons is going to take it. 11 for 13 from the field tonight. Really nice finishing around the rim. Even at times where he got caught with a defender who, like Adams, who was able to get his body in front of him, he was still felt comfortable enough going to that little jump right hand baby hook that he has. A couple didn't fall. That's okay. We've been saying this from the beginning around Simmons. It's okay for them not to go in. You have to try. You have to try. Like, if he wasn't going to try to get the ball into the lane, to get the ball to the basket, the Nets were going to have an incredibly, incredibly difficult time. It wasn't going to work. It just wasn't going to work. If Simmons wasn't able to unlock this part of his game and bring back some of this, it's not even like a hugely offensive dynamic package. It's just the ability to try to get his 6'11" body into the lane against either equal sized defenders or, even better, smaller defenders. If he was not going to do that, the Nets offense was really never going to be able to get to the next level. There was just no chance. They just needed him to have the threat, at least the threat, that he was going to take the ball off the dribble and take it to the basket. And over these last couple games, he's done it a ton. He's done it 19. He's taken 19 shots over the last 2 games. He's 17 for 19 over the last 2 in his last 67 minutes. And this is the part of his game that, if he's doing this, is going to open up everything else. Because we've also seen from his game that when he gets into the lane and things don't work, he's been able to turn around and find open shooters or find the next best pass to make. 12 assists over the last 2 games as well. This version of Simmons is where you can, if you start extrapolating out over the course of the rest of the season about what things can turn into for this team, it's this version of Simmons that has you start to get excited. Like, this version of him pressuring the defense, trying to get to the basket, being able, okay with taking some contact, okay with missing at times. That's okay. Players in the NBA miss. I think sometimes Simmons has been not wanting to do that, and it showed with a just sort of timid nature to his game. But that is starting to come around here. Again, I don't know if it's him just kind of feeling more confident with the offense, if it's the fact that his knees and his back just feel fully healthy, if it's just that someone on the team or coaching staff has just pressed him to say that this is what needs to happen. Who cares? I don't care why it is. Doesn't matter. Have a bad dream or a good dream about it. Whatever the reason is that Simmons has turned around these last couple, it's all good for this offense. Because when he's doing this, the offense it's very, very difficult on opposing defenses to try to deal with what comes next. Because if he can finish around the rim, or if he gets cut off, if you can find a pass to an open shooter with guys like Harris, guys like Royce O'Neal, guys like Yuta Watanabe, who's turned into, another splash brother all of a sudden with the way he's shooting threes. And then not to mention guys like Kyrie and KD, who can also, back cut you, who can get into the lane, who can get into the mid range, all this different stuff. If Simmons is the key to all of this, and if this is going to be the version of him that we get now, then the Nets have a ceiling that they can go to. There's another level that the Nets can go to if this is what his game is going to be. So it's super exciting to get it back-to-back games with Simmons like this. This is exactly what you needed to see from him. I love it. We've been dying for this, to see this version of him over this, basically the course of the entire season. And I do think that even, announcers and other NBA folks are starting to take notice that this might be starting to come around for him. And if that's going to be the case, the Nets are in really, really good shape. Want to talk a little bit more about the full team effort over the Grizzlies. Want to mention Yuta Watanabe because the guys just turned into I'm laughing because it's so awesome. So we'll get into all this in a second. First, got to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made super, super easy. Basically, Prize Picks figured out that the best way to play daily fantasy is not to put in lineups, not to try to figure out salaries. It's just to go against the player projections on your entries, just go more or less on them. And then that's what you figure out. You just say more or less with the points, more or less with the assists, more or less with the rebounds. Take it from your gut, use analytics, whatever you want to do. Prize Picks is just making this super, super easy. It's basically the reason that daily fantasy came around. It's the most fun version of it. You think Ben Simmons is going to be in line for a triple double? Go more on the points, go more on the assists, go more on the rebounds. That's what Prize Picks is going to give you. You pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25x. That's 25 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus those Prize Picks projections. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks was going to give those first-time users a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. You deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50, all the way around with those numbers. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All right, let's close this thing out with just some general talk around the game here against the Memphis Grizzlies. I mentioned Yuta Watanabe. It's funny because I do feel like we're at a point now where we're mentioning him every game. And at first it felt, I don't know if I want to say it felt fun to just kind of mention him because Adam was huge on the signing and we thought that there might be some upside and, maybe we got a steal. And then, he hits a couple threes and this is over the course of the season and things are kind of looking good. And now the guy's just like a regular NBA rotation player who frankly can't miss. Another 4 for 6 from 3-point range tonight. 6 for 9 from the field. Going into this game, he had some of the best 3-point shooting, effective field goal shooting, and true shooting numbers in the entire NBA among guys who had played more than 200 minutes. Like he was already, before this game even started, one of the most efficient just scorers in the league. That's it, point stop. Like that's where the numbers were. They were better than just about everyone in the league. And then he does this tonight, 16 points in 25 minutes, where again, he goes 4 for 6 from 3. And you're like, well, it's only going to improve. What they've gotten out of Yuta here is unbelievable. Even if you were high on the signing, there's just no way you could have seen this coming. This has been beyond anybody's imagination, really, and what they thought they were getting with Watanabe. Remember, we weren't 100% sure he was going to break camp with the team. Yeah, 6'9". Yeah, he had a lot of length. Yeah, like there was glimpses of it you saw in Toronto. But right now, he's a guy that's just an absolute flamethrower. He's got all the energy. The confidence is through the roof. He's shooting 56% from 3, 60% from the field, 7.5 points per game, but that's only because the minutes haven't really been there. He's a guy that they sort of are starting to feel comfortable closing. He's a guy that we're probably going to see start at some point, mostly because of injury related. I don't think he's going to supplant anybody in the starting lineup, but I do think at some point, when someone goes down, when a Joe Harris goes down, when a Royce O'Neal goes down, or just needs a rest or something like that, I'm not going to be shocked if we get a Yuta Watanabe start. He's deserved it. It's been awesome. It's been amazing. I cannot believe that we're in a situation now where we're talking about this guy like this. And these are the super fun stories in the NBA. When you follow a team, when guys come over in the offseason, when guys come over as free agents, you always hope that your GM is one of the GMs that can pick out sort of the diamond in the rough kind of guys, or like the forgotten dude, or someone that's been cast off by another organization. The Nets have been really good at this over the years. Sean Marks and company have a lot of W's on their ledger when it comes to one man's trash is another man's treasure in signing guys. And it's riddled. The pre-Kyrie and KD era was riddled with these guys. D'Angelo Russell was like this. Spencer Dinwiddie was like this, right? Like we have lots of guys that they were able to, Karis LeVert, Bruce Brown. I mean, there's tons who went on to get paid significantly more than anyone ever thought they would get paid, just because their performance on the court with Brooklyn was so good. And we're going to throw Yuta Watanabe right in with this group. Like, he belongs right in with that group that is now among like the best deals so far of the offseason, with just how efficient the shooting has been, with just what he's been able to bring to the team. Look, is this going to regress? Of course. Like, the guy's not going to shoot 55% from three over the course of this. No one does. 56%. Nobody does that. It's not going to happen. There's plenty of misses coming in this guy's bag. That's all right. He's built up. He's already banked so many W's here that he can go a few games with missing, and you still know that you got a really, really nice find in Yuta Watanabe. It's an awesome story. The crowd loves it. He's super energetic when he's out there. Got multiple flexes over the last couple of games. He had a heat check 3 here in the fourth quarter when he's sharing the court with like Durant and Joe Harris and guys who, are known as shooters. And he was still like, hey, I'm not missing. It's heat check time. That was the one he missed, of course, because that's just kind of how the NBA works sometimes. But I love that he took it. And I love that everyone kind of knew he was going to take it, because that's just the sort of heater that he's been on right now. And there other teams are leaving him open. If they're going to have guys that can space the floor, when you have Kevin Durant, when you have Kyrie Irving, if you can space the floor and knock down threes in this offense, you are going to get shots. Markieff Morris got some shots tonight. Joe Harris is getting shots. They're getting lots of good looks because the personnel that they have with this team is set up to take advantage of other teams' defenses. That's what you hope is going to happen by having a little less size on the interior, is to be able to make threes, because you can just spread the court and play, 4 out when a guy like Simmons is on the court, or 4 out when a guy like Claxton's on the court. And Yuta just has, cashed in on on every piece of upside that I think anyone realistically thought we were going to get from him. So Yuta scores 16. Joe Harris had another nice shooting night, 4 for 6 from 3. Royce O'Neal, 4 for 6 from 3. So that shot really, really well, 47% overall. They had 33 assists in this game. The ball was moving. It didn't look exactly the same as we had seen without Kyrie. There weren't as many doubles on Kevin Durant in this one that he had to work his way out of, but it didn't end up like really mattering, because that was just not stylistically what they needed to do. They still dropped 127 on Memphis in this win. So there's no real huge complaint, or any complaint really, about what the offense looked like. This was exactly the kind of game the Nets needed to go out and play. They needed to go out and win this game. They needed to have some of the other guys step up. I don't think anyone thought Kyrie was going to come in here and drop 50, working his way back into the rotation, working his way back up with the minutes. And I think I think that was to be expected. But to have everyone step up, to have them pull away in the fourth, to have Simmons look great. KD, just like, we went the whole episode in a game where KD scored 26, 8 for 8 for the field, 9 for 16. And you feel like, hey, we'll just talk about the other guys, because it was just a really, really, really that kind of team effort. And just, I don't know, they're 8-9 right now. After you see a game like this, it doesn't feel like an 8-9 team, right? Does it feel like an 8-9 team to you? It doesn't to me after a game like this. It's the Nets, so there's wonkiness. It's the Nets, so not everyone's played. It's the Nets, so there's always question marks about what's come before and what's come next. But for this night only, you feel pretty good about what you saw with the Nets. 127, 115, 12-point win over Memphis. Adam's usually the one with the quotes, so we'll try to get out of here in a second without them, because this is the part of the show that I always forget to just preload a quote to get out on. Make sure you are subscribed over on YouTube. We are climbing. I think we're about probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks away from hitting 4,000 followers. Be part of the group that's subscribed over to YouTube. Really appreciate all the YouTube love that we've been getting. Almost always these post games are going to be live, but doing it solo for this one was just a little easier to do a recorded one rather than a live one. Know that whenever Adam and I are around together, it's post-game live over on YouTube. So make sure you hit subscribe, and make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast as well. Locked on Nets. It's super free. All you got to do is hit those buttons. That's how we make sure we can keep the podcast free coming for you. No quote from one of the great American poets. This time, that's an Adam Armbrecht deal. All I'll say is we will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.